A reading before the sermon. This is Blessing the Door by Jan Richardson. No eye has seen any God besides you who works for those who wait for him. From Isaiah chapter 64, verse 4. First, let us say a blessing upon all who have entered here before us. You can see the sign of their passage by the worn place where their hand rested on the door frame as they walked through, the smooth sill of the threshold where they crossed. Press your ear to the door for a moment before you enter, and you will hear their voices murmuring words you cannot quite make out, but know are full of welcome. On the other side, these ones who wait for you, if you do not know by now, understand what a blessing can do. How it appears like nothing you expected, how it arrives as a visitor, outrageous invitation, a child. How it takes the form of angel or dream, how it comes in words like, how can this be? And lifted up the lowly. How it sounds like, in the wilderness, prepare the way. Those who wait for you know how the mark of a true blessing is that it will take you where you did not think to go. Once through this door, there will be more doors, more blessings, more who watch and wait for you. But here at this door of beginning, the blessing cannot be said without you. So lay your palm against the frame that those before you touched. Place your feet where others paused in this entryway. Say the thing that you most need, and the door will open wide. And by this word, the door is blessed. And by this word, the blessing is begun, from which, door by door, all the rest will come. Maybe it's because we're just beginning the season of Advent, and I've been thinking about Advent calendars with the little flaps that you open every day. Usually doors that reveal something different and new, but I have been thinking about doors. There are Advent calendars for so many things now that you could have a number of different Advent calendars for every day of Advent and use the whole calendars as their own kind of door to greeting the season. Advent calendars are meant to inspire us to practice patience, wonder, and joy or delight at what waits us in this season, the mysteries that await us and will unfold over the season, and to practice these daily. Like all of us, I have moved through many doors in my life. New churches, new work buildings, new offices, new homes, new vets and doctors and mechanics, new stores, new airports, new schools, new cars, moving through rooms and hallways and aisles. I don't know that I've always paid much attention to the doors unless they were particularly striking or memorable. It was always more about what was on the other side of the door, what possibilities, opportunities, and challenges might be there. Working in hospitals, though, moving room to room, unit to unit, one end to the other, the doors are kind of like those little flaps on the Advent calendar. Even when the doors are mostly the same, what waits on the other side of it is always different. I appreciated the predictability and uniformity of the rooms. I'm sure they're designed that way so that any time a medical professional is there, they don't have to worry about where things are located, since they should be have the same setup throughout the unit. But it also made it easy for me as a chaplain to scan what was there and notice the differences, the number of chairs, the cards hung on the wall, the notes from staff or family on the whiteboards, the books or food or instructions or whatever else on the trays. Making rounds in a hospital, you might have ideas about what you'd get based on a patient's chart or what their nurse told you about them. But it was mostly only straightforward what was needed when called to the NICU or hospice units during second shift, that is, that death is coming or had come. Moving room to room, this patient with endocarditis, this one with severe sepsis, this one intubated, this one with head and neck cancer, this one with complications from an infection that has impacted organ system function. This week, the patient in this room appreciates your visits. Next week, the patient in this room does not appreciate your visits. Even when I was given some information about a visit I was called to, the picture presented was only ever a fragment. I was called to a patient's room once in the neurosurgical ICU where a family was wrestling with withdrawing life-sustaining measures. The patient had had a stroke that had cut off circulation to his brainstem. I had seen this kind of case before, and there is no recovery from it. The family, though, was facing the fact that their 25-year-old son, grandson, partner, father to one child and another on the way, that he was not going to recover, it didn't seem. And they only spoke the most limited English. We were using the tele-interpreting device service for me to offer prayer and what comfort can be had in such a situation, acknowledging the great sadness and their loss. They were concerned about the ethics and morality of removing him from life-supportive measures, about what this would mean for their family, about what would happen to him on the other side of death. Chaplaincy, like all ministries, is a kind of work where having and relying on knowledge is important, but being present is always more so. Like you go in with your tool belt and your toolbox, but you don't know what you'll need until you start working. But sitting with people, listening to them tell their story or cry or yell or curse or laugh, praying with them, extending the grace and compassion of God, even if you yourself don't believe in them, so that these people whose eyes you look into may receive some comfort. To offer some space to catch their breath and help them move into what will hold them after this moment. That the mystery of how they will ever make it through is eased for just a short time as they are companioned. The stories are never the same. To be a spiritual, pastoral presence, wonder and curiosity are skills worth cultivating. Asking questions, advocating for patients and their families, communicating with other staff are all a part of it, but wondering itself goes a long way. Chaplains and all ministers can help bridge the gap between a patient and loved ones and their medical staff and help navigate the many questions and answers that both sides seek. Honestly, it helps smooth things over with even the most fragile of egos, which is a huge plus. When you say things like, I wonder if it would be possible to get the doctor to come back, or for someone to go over things now that the patient's family has arrived. Or, I wonder what it's like for you to be going through this right now. What is the story or the meaning that you're telling yourself about this or that you have for this? I was wondering what resources might be available for the patient to follow up with after this. Sometimes the doors are more metaphorical than actual, more like thresholds of a kind, really. Like the ways our new members have walked through the physical and metaphorical doors of joining this community. They have been seeking something and are choosing something. They wonder what is possible here for themselves, for this congregation, for the community, for the future. Like the doors on game shows where you have to pick one and see what prize you win, the doors we encounter offer opportunity and possibility. We don't know for sure what These will be $500, a washer and dryer, or a new car. In case you didn't know, we're not offering any of those here. Each one, though, presents their own path for moving forward. It's so important when we have these situations emerge to not be invested in the outcome. When I visited with patients, my only hoped for outcome was that they would feel that they had been witnessed and cared for. If they had resources or additional support, I was happy to provide it and always did my best to make sure that they had what they needed when they left my care. But I knew I could not choose for them what care they sought or how or if they did their work. As a Unitarian Universalist, this practice of wondering and being open to the mystery comes naturally in the context of our faith. We are, after all, a seeking people. Seeking is how many of us arrived at this faith. Seeking is what we do while we're here. And seeking sometimes leads us, some of us, away. Wonder and appreciation of the mystery that surrounds us are both core elements of our Unitarian Universalist faith. Back about 9 or 10 years ago, when Twitter was young and full of hope and fully staffed, the platform had a strict 140 character limit, and some ministers started playing with the idea of a 6-word story of faith and asked people to share theirs. My wonderful religious educator colleague, Robin Slaw, offered as hers, love radically, serve gratefully, wonder daily. If those words seem remotely familiar, you've seen them used on social media as what Unitarian Universalism means. Although I wrote a few, the one that I stuck with is, we're here to build love's house. We've practiced this wondering together, bowing before the mystery as a faith in the last few years quite a bit. The team of people appointed to the Article 2 Study Commission were tasked with wondering about re-envisioning the Article 2 section of the UUA's bylaws. Our previously much beloved principles and purposes were last revised, apart from the momentous tasks of using more inclusive language, in 1987. Article 2, as we all now know, includes the covenant of the member congregations of the UUA, commonly referred to as the 7 principles, as well as our 6 sources from which our living tradition draws inspiration. Suggestions about adding an 8th principle and making amendments to the first 7 were the subject of conversation for more than a decade. The Article 2 Study Commission convened in the fall of 2020 to begin the process of asking wondering questions. An 8th principle had been proposed. How would that fit? Other religious and faith traditions have been named to be considered in rewording the 6 sources, to be more explicit in their inclusion, specifically thinking about Buddhism and Islam, among others. How will our understanding shift? In the now 63 years since the merger of the American Unitarian Association and the Universalist Church of America, how has our understanding of ourselves changed? But the 3-page draft that was offered for review with Unitarian Universalists throughout our shared faith made it clear that once that door of wonder had been just cracked open a little bit, eventually that door was swung wide and the questions flooded in, wondering if the current structure could even support the vision of a faith on the move, a faith claiming itself, a faith that calls for liberatory transformation through the power of love. No matter how long the list, would it ever be enough to exhaustively name everything we value? Would it ever be enough to name every source that brings us inspiration? Our Article 2 study commissioners entered the wardrobe and found themselves suddenly in Narnia. The principles have been transformed into the far more magical words of values and covenant. The UUA board, through their co-moderators in their charge to the commission, named the core value for Unitarian Universalists as love, because in surveys, that's what we have named for ourselves, and around which are justice, generosity, transformation, pluralism, equity, and interdependence. with each in turn defined, and all starting with a beautiful phrase, "We covenant to." And our previously known 6 sources were reframed this way, found in the inspiration section. Direct experiences of transcending mystery and wonder are primary sources of Unitarian Universalist inspiration. These experiences open our hearts, renew our spirits, and transform our lives. We draw upon and are inspired by sacred, secular, and scientific understandings that help us make meaning and live into our values. These sources ground us and sustain us in ordinary, oh, how we long for ordinary, difficult and joyous times. We respect the histories, contexts, and cultures in which these sources were created and are currently practiced. Grateful for the experiences that move us, aware of the religious ancestries we inherit, and enlivened by the diversity which enriches our faith, we are called to ever deepen and expand our wisdom. If a committee can open doors of wonder, like the Article 2 Study Commission did, how might we create doors that are invitations to wonder and opening to mystery? What if, instead of delving right in and doing things the way that they've always been done, we paused for just a moment before crossing a threshold, reflecting on what curiosities there may be on the other side when we get there? What if this helped us realize that while the shoe we had maybe fit, it wasn't the one we wanted, or helped us put our proverbial best foots forward? The re-envisioning of Article 2 has renewed my hope for our faith. I think it captures much of what is best about us, drawing from our heritage while being informed and anchored by what we hope to build in the future. It frees us from the ways that we keep ourselves imprisoned and small. It gives the space to inspire us to live into the faith we long for and the world we dream about. It reminds me of these words from Julian Jamaica Soto. We hold hope close. In this community, we hold hope close. We don't always know what comes next, but that cannot dissuade us. We don't always know just what to do, but that will not mean that we are lost in the wilderness. We rely on the certainty beneath, the foundation of our values and ethics. We are the people who return to love like a North Star and to the truth that we are greater together than we are alone. Our hope does not live in some glimmer of an indistinct future. Rather, we know the way to the world of which we dream. And by covenant and in the movement forward of one right action and the next, we know that one day we will arrive at home.